This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out in association with Shamrock Boxing, and this is podcast 10 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast. And with me, I'm delighted to be joined by fellow Lights Out team members Asif Khan and Ron Mohsin Gulsher. How's it going, lads?
All good.
Yep. Good to have you boys on here as always. Before we get started, just wanted to remind the people out there, if they haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms. The links to the social media platforms are in the description in the video. There's one thing about boxing that people love, and that's a comeback in boxing. Muhammad Ali did it after 3 years of being at the ring. Tyson Fury also did it after being at the ring for almost 3 years. And both Ali and Fury went on to achieve greats in the sport. You know, Muhammad Ali went on to win the world title twice. Tyson Fury is now the current WBC, Ring Magazine and Lineal heavyweight champion of the world. But if you look at them two comebacks, both fighters were in their prime. But what if two fighters from the heavyweight generation of the 90s era were to come back into their late 50s? That's right, I'm talking about Iron Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion of all time, and the two-weight world heavyweight champion, and the only man ever to win the heavyweight title on 4 different occasions, Evander, the real deal Holyfield. Guys, they've more or less released it on their social media platforms that they're coming back into boxing. Earlier this week, Evander Holyfield released a video of him training and has openly admitted that he's coming back into boxing to promote a charity which is known as the Unite for Our Fight. Mike Tyson also released a video on his Instagram the other night saying that he's coming back into boxing. 53 years old and 57 years old. What are your thoughts on Tyson and Holyfield coming back into boxing?
So let's get that straight. That's a combined age of 110.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, look, when we talk about fighters, past fighters coming back, I mean, you mentioned 2 names there, Tyson, Fury, and Ali. But one name you didn't mention was George Foreman.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remember, he was no spring chicken when he came back stepped into the ring, and he goes on to become the oldest heavyweight title holder.
Yeah, well, I think you make a good point there. But heavyweight, it's a brutal. It's probably the most dangerous division at the moment with the quality of fighters. Everyone loves a comeback, but listen, I hope it's just for charity. I hope it's a free rounder. I hope they win head cards and that. I hope it's not because they need money. Tyson looks pretty well off. He's doing lots of other things. But, yeah, if it's for charity, who wouldn't want to see a third fight between them?
As I mentioned, achievements-wise, they both achieved so much in the sport. Tyson being the youngest heavyweight champion of all time. Evander Holyfield winning a bronze medal in the 1984 Olympics, a former 2-weight world champion, the only 4-time heavyweight champion. I mean, they both achieved so much in their career as professional boxers. Does the sport of boxing not owe it to them to let them at least have one more crack at it if that's what they really want?
No, because listen, these guys are greats. They'll always go down as greats, and it's a dangerous sport. If they were to maybe get back in and fight each other, then yeah. But if they're talking about proper comebacks where they're fighting fighters that are active, when did Tyson last fight? 2005.
2005, yeah.
I mean, geez, that was 15 years ago. So yeah, hopefully, listen, like I said, it's just a charity fight. They're great names. They've had great careers. Boxing doesn't owe them anything. It's a brutal sport. It's not a sport of favours where, just because of their name, they should earn the right to come straight back in. No one wants to see Mike Tyson come back and get knocked out by a 20-year-old or something like that. So yeah, like I said, hopefully it's just for charity and it's just for fun.
Ron, your thoughts on them two coming back?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Asif. I think I do like that idea. They're raising awareness for a particular charity. I mean, they're both high profile. They're both very heavily involved with their various projects that they've got going on in their lives. They both have got lots of media commitments that they have. So they've always been in and around the boxing kind of world, haven't they? They're obviously always offering their opinion on, on the heavyweight division and boxing in general. But one thing I liked, I was listening to the other day, it was Mike Tyson's talk, Hot Box. I think, I can't remember the name
Hot
of
Box
his
with Mike
podcast.
Tyson, yeah. Hot Box with Mike Tyson.
And it was really heartbreaking listening to him. What he was talking about boxing and what it meant for him, and it's ever since he's left it, he feels there's a part of him missing. That warrior, that fear, he used to intimidate people. And, when he was talking about it with Sugar Ray Leonard, he was getting very teary about it as well. And I was thinking, damn, man, it's that itch that these boxers get, that they want to get back in. It's difficult leaving the sport, something that you've done your whole life. Boxing was their life. And then to leave it behind, I think that's something that might play on a lot of boxers' minds as well, that they want to get back in.
One thing that we need... Sorry, I go on.
No, I was going to say, maybe, they have the age for a few years, 3, 4, 5 years, but 15 years is a long time, man. And Mike Tyson, he's such an intelligent person, he knows that them days are gone. So hopefully it's for charity, it's just some fun. And he's not coming back and, thinking he's going to fight Tyson Fury or someone.
One thing I really like about this is that they both more or less admitted at the same time they're coming back into boxing. And when you speak about Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield, you have to look back to them 2 fights that they had in the mid-90s. We all remember how the first fight went, and we'll definitely never forget how the second fight ended. At that time, they were both arguably 2 of the best heavyweights in the world. You had Holyfield, who went into that fight as the underdog. Mike Tyson was an absolute wrecking machine then. Well, you look back at them 2 fights, Asif. I mean, they were both the main 2 of the main fighters in that division. Why do you think a third fight doesn't sound as appealing as it does today?
Because of the time that's passed, maybe if it happened there, maybe a year or so after the second one, you could say, but it's been so long, that the edge that wanting to know what would happen in a third fight, that kind of curiosity is gone, hasn't it? I mean, it's been 15 years since Tyson fought. God knows about Evander Holyfield, but that second fight for me, man, I mean, when I think about that second fight, it just had everything. It was just packed with drama. You could watch that fight over and over again. Just watch that round over and over again, the way it ended, the interview after where Tyson's in the corridor, and he's like, look at my eye, man, look at my eye. It's just, it's just one of the, I always say it was one of the best fights I've ever seen, because it's just packed with drama. And hopefully, listen, I would want to see a third fight in a charity sense, but nothing professional.
Ron, I mean, obviously, if this does happen, someone out there has got to potentially promote this. Someone's got to put it on their platform. I mean, some people are going to agree with it. Some people ain't going to agree with it. If it does happen, and we do get to see a third fight, who do you think will step up and be willing to take that risk? Because let's remember, one is 53 and one is 57 years old. There's a big risk involved in this. Who do you think will step up and promote this fight?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that Eddie Hearn got him through his hat in there.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's got a deal done already.
Yeah, got him involved. I mean, they're both high-profile fighters. They're big personalities. They're well respected. They're both Hall of Famers. As Asif made some really good points. As long as it's for charity, it's nothing too serious. They're at that age now. Will they even pass a boxing medical examination? That's another question as well that they need to cross. But would their families want them to do that, to put themselves through that again? I remember, when we back in England, we had the Eubank and Nigel Benn having the third fight, and that was and I think both their sons were saying, "No, dads, don't go there." So what have they got to prove? I mean, exactly. If they win, whoever wins, it's like, yeah, mate. As Asif said, 15 years too late, or 20 odd years too late, mate. That third fight, if it didn't end in the way it did, that second fight, yeah, it would have made sense to have that third fight then. But
Yeah, yeah. Eubank and Ben, they kind of they continue that spike, didn't they? They even until now there's a hatred between them. But Holyfield and Tyson, they settled their beef. You know, you see interviews with them now. They talk about how they love each other and how they're brothers and that. So you couldn't sell that fight. You know, you couldn't even sell that fight. And you made a point there. I mean, I can't see any sane board passing that fight or giving a license to any of them boxers, other than if it's somewhere in some unknown country. Other than that, I can't see it.
Whenever I put up like a video of these guys sparring today, you know, at the age that they're at, I mean, Asif will say, or someone else will say, anyone can look good in a minute's YouTube video clip, but you still have to take it into consideration that these guys still look pretty good for their age. I mean, we've seen the videos lately of Mike Tyson hitting the pads. We've seen that ferocious and dangerous hand speed still there. I mean, even looking at the Evander Holyfield video the other day, you know, the power and the speed has not gone. And I think that a third fight, don't get me wrong, again, there's a lot of risk involved in it, but it might not be such a bad thing after all. I mean, the last time we did actually see him in the ring was with Lennox Lewis before the Wilder and Tyson Fury fight, the second fight, and they received some award, I think it's from the WBC. But other than that, I would like to see him back in the ring. And of course, we've already seen someone calling out Mike Tyson this week. Sonny Bill Williams, the former rugby player, has offered Mike Tyson a 7-figure paycheck. As if you're a young fighter right now, let's say you're an young up and coming heavyweight, and you've just found out that Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield are looking to come back into the sport, would you not want to jump at that chance and perhaps think, I could fight them, I could possibly beat them and have their name on my record?
No, because what does it do for my record? I've beat a 53-year-old Mike Tyson. And you know what? Boxing is a gentleman's sport as well. You know, these fighters, young fighters, they probably watched hours and hours of videos of these, and they try to mirror certain things of their game. Would they want to get in with a granddad? You know, that's what these two are. They're granddads. Would they want to get in and punch them in the face and hurt them just to put their name on the record? I don't think any boxer would. You know, Sonny Williams is a rugby player, right? So,
yeah, Sonny Bill Williams.
It'd be a charity event. I can't see anyone. And if they did, you know, I'd lose all respect for them, because I wouldn't want to see that. I wouldn't want to see a 20-year-old go and fight Mike Tyson. Just wouldn't sit right with me.
I mean, it's interesting, you know, we talk about these fighters. Another fighter that comes to my mind who did the similar thing, came back later on in his life, Razor Ruddock. I think if you guys have heard of him, who fought Tyson twice and went, you know, the full 12 rounds with Mike Tyson. He came back after a long period of time out, and it just wasn't the same for him anymore. You know what I mean? He struggled against, you know, younger opposition, younger fighters, and then he decided to, you know what, this is a young man's sport, and he decided to kind of hang up his gloves. You know, kind of common sense prevailed. You know, as you can say. So I mean, it's not. I mean, as great as it sounds for a young potential up and coming boxer to call out Mike Tyson and get in the ring with him, and in order to raise his profile, but he's not gaining much any credit other than that, to be honest.
I think listen, when you look at comebacks, you look at Ricky Hatton. He came back and knocked out, didn't he? The only one that's like come back is Mayweather. When he took some time out of the ring, he retired. He wasn't old. He was in his 40s. He's probably the only fighter now that could come back after a few years and probably capture a world title. All these other fighters, I think they passed their best.
I mean, you got to mention. I mean, George Foreman. You know, we can't forget what he achieved, and you know, he fought against a lot younger Holyfield, and you know, they went the distance. You know, it was a
fight as well. Yeah,
it was a brilliant fight. It was a brawl, and Holyfield said, "Man, this guy can hit." You know, so it can be done. I guess it depends on, you know, mindset. You know, what are you in it for? You know, what do you want? Is it for another payday? Then if it's a payday, then you're getting desperate. There's a very fine line, I think.
Evander Holyfield did an interview with Sky Sports Boxing and asked if a charity match between him and Mike Tyson could be arranged, and he simply answered with, "I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I wouldn't ask nobody to do anything that I didn't want to do. But if it's for charity and if we can work on something that works out for everybody, then it's a win-win situation. So I think, Evander Holyfield is more or less up for it. We haven't really heard Mike Tyson, whether he wants to have a third fight with Evander Holyfield. But I think with the character of Mike Tyson, and Asif obviously mentioned the drama that they had in that second fight. Because I remember Mike Tyson, constantly saying, look, headbutts to the eye, and then obviously did what he did at the end of that round by biting Holyfield's ear. I don't think Mike Tyson would say no to it. I think Mike Tyson would be bang up for it. But one question, you do have to ask, and obviously a lot of people talk about this in boxing. If you look at that era, that locker room of your Riddick Bowes, your Mike Tysons, your Lennox Lewis's, your Evander Holyfields, if you compare them
to some degree as well.
If you compare that era to today's era of the heavyweight division, which heavyweight division do you think comes out on top? Which heavyweight division would you prefer? Would you looking at the mid-90s, or would you go with today's heavyweight division?
Mid-90s.
Mid-90s, definitely, yeah. And for me, it's just because of Mike Tyson, man. I don't think. Listen, he defined heavyweight boxing because, when you think of a heavyweight, you think of someone 6'5", 6'6", weighing God knows how much. This guy was short. He didn't have the reach, but he went against everything. And some of his knockouts, when you watch them back, even now, like the rubbish quality of picture they're in, you still get shivers, man. You still, your hair stands up because he was something we've never seen before.
I mean, those mid-90s heavyweight fights, man, they were wars. I mean, there's some names that you didn't mention. Riddick Bowe in that as well. You had Shannon Briggs. He was pretty good at the time. David Tua, I remember. Yeah, so David Tua was coming up. He was supposed to be the next coming of Mike Tyson. Yeah, I mean, those were really exciting fights to watch.
I'm up for a third fight because I respect both of them highly because of what they achieved in their career, and I've always believed that there's no harm in someone wanting to have one last go at it. But obviously, then again, you have to remember, you see in football with charity matches, legends come out and play the odd game once or twice a year. But this is boxing, though. There's a massive risk involved in it. Something could go horribly could go wrong.
That's why, hopefully it's for charity, and the head guards are on, and maybe Holyfield wears some ear guards or something just to make sure, walks out the ring with both his ears.
Would an American boxing board want to give these guys a license? I think, just because of what they achieved and because the respect that they've got for today, if they want to have a third fight, let them have a third fight. But then again,
I don't agree with that.
Look,
no,
at the end of the day, these guys
if
did
anything was to happen at the end of that fight, who's that going to fall on?
It's not going to fall on nobody because nobody's put a gun to their heads to say, no, listen.
20, 30 years ago. So let them have a fight now then. There's obviously consequences. There's going to be fallbacks. You know what I mean?
If they want to have a third fight, let them have a third fight. If
it's
good enough for Rocky Balboa, why is it not good enough for these?
No, but look, there's a board somewhere in this world that would sanction that. But if there's
probably Luxembourg or something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look at the British board of boxing. They stopped Rio Ferdinand boxing, and he was I know he wasn't a boxer, but he was an athlete. He's a sportsman, and so that common sense prevailed there. And he was 36, 37.
Yeah, but saying that, Freddie Flintoff got a bloody license. So how do you explain that?
He's Freddie Flintoff, isn't he?
I'd have loved to have seen David Price fight Rio Ferdinand, Liverpool versus Man United. What David Price would do. Yeah, but anyway, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's one you can debate all day long. But we're talking about there's a risk involved, which is true. Nigel Benn was this close to coming back into boxing. He was meant to fight Sakio Bika at the back end of last year. And then he had a shoulder injury. Yeah,
but do you know what, Faisal? Yeah, I think with boxers like that, I don't think there was ever any intention to come back. I think they just do it to keep their name relevant. You look at people like Nigel Benn, his son's becoming a star. I think it's just to keep their name out there, just to be spoken about in the conversation.
But what I'm trying to say is that we looked at the Nigel Benn thing, for example, and he picked up an injury. I think it was 4 weeks before the fight with Sakio Bika. What if there was a certain amount of tests and, fitness regimes that these two would have to go through for this fight. Because as you say quite regularly, anyone could look good in a 30-second clip. Now, what if there was like a medical they had to do just to prove that they're fit enough for a third fight to go ahead?
If I say Evander Holyfield is nearly 60 years old, let's just let that sink in for a second. He's 57 years old. He's older. He probably is a granddad already.
Bernard Hopkins was a world champion at 50.
But Bernard Hopkins stayed kind of active, right? He fought up until 50. Do you remember Mike Tyson's last professional fight? It was sad to watch.
Against Kevin McBride, yeah.
That was when he was, maybe 40 years old or whatever. Now, you don't listen. Some people, some boxers, they earn the right for us to remember them in their prime. They shouldn't come back and for all those people that never seen these boxers fight, they've heard so much of Mike Tyson. They then see Mike Tyson fight at 53 and be like, oh, yeah, he's not that good. What's all the hoo-ha about him? Just keep doing your hot box or whatever he does and leave the boxing to the youngsters.
I mean, it would be interesting to see. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I wouldn't say no to seeing it. But again, you have to look at it. There's a massive risk involved. And we are talking about two of the best heavyweights of all time. And again, achievement-wise, they did it all. And I've always believed that Mike Tyson, if it wasn't for the layoff, would have gone in and achieved a lot more. I've always believed that Mike Tyson didn't have that layoff that he did when he came back in. Before he came back in,
as well.
The lifestyle as well.
Like Mohsin said, man, if you listen to his interviews now and he talks about his boxing and how he was done over and the people he had around him, his lifestyle was all wrong.
With what we've seen from these training videos and these training clips and following them on social media, listening to their interviews, it might happen, it might not happen. But if it did happen, let's say it was a 5-rounder, Holyfield, Tyson Fury. With what you guys have seen, who would you back to win if a third fight did happen?
Listen, I went in the garden before on the bag and I boxed for 30 seconds. And I watched it back and I thought, listen, I can take out Tyson Fury. There's 30 second clips. Anyone can look good.
Come on, you have to give a prediction.
We're touching at straws here, man. We have too much to go on. To be honest,
we're talking about a third and final fight.
Well, look, I mean, if you're going on
a good previous old spark being relit,
Holyfield had the better of him on two out of 2.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd fancy Holyfield, but he's the older guy. So maybe Mike Tyson. I mean, Mike Tyson. I've noticed from his September photo to now, they're complete opposites of each other. He was out of shape. Now he's kind of found some sort of motivation, inspiration, and he looks great. He looks fantastic. He's got his abs showing, and so Mike Tyson might be the hungrier one. So, well, I mean, not in a literal sense, I hope, but yeah.
It could happen. It might not happen. I mean, only time will tell. Asif, final thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, listen, if it's for charity, then, there's nothing wrong you can do for charity. If they were trying to raise awareness for certain things, then listen, all fair play to them. And, I'd tune in, I'd buy the pay-per-view just because it's for charity. But if it's no head guards, no ear guards, then it wouldn't be nice to watch, man. I couldn't see them. I could see them fighting for 3 minutes in the second round and both just be completely gassed out on the stools and be like, listen, call it a day, that's it. We're not even getting up off our stools. So, if it happens,
your final thoughts on this?
I mean, I wouldn't say I wouldn't watch it. I mean, but the boxing world will be, let's see what's on. So, but it's gonna happen for the right reasons. It's gonna be an exhibition. Nothing too serious, and anything beyond that, then it's a no for me.
I tell you what would be even more interesting than that is because I heard John Fury call out Mike Tyson. That I would pay for. John Fury and Mike Tyson.
He named his bloody son after him.
My son will fight any man born from his mother. It would be very interesting. But listen, let's see what happens. John Fury's got a bit of beef that needs to settle with Mickey Theo first. And that is all we've got time for on the Lights Out Boxing podcast. Do we want to see Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield 3? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. I mean, it's got I want to see it. The other two ain't really up for it, but then again, that's their opinion. They're entitled to it. Once again, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And yeah, that's all we've got time for on the Lights Out Boxing Podcast. Thank you very much for your time, Asif and Ron. Pleasure as always. If you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you share out our content. And thank you for listening to podcast 10 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast.